since this all started in the last month, you don't have to tell me which brands have come to you, but how many brands have come to you asking you to work you, Bob, to work your magic, and what exactly are they looking for? And what you can describe.
You're just about to ask a question and the screen froze.
Classic, right? Let me talk. Out. Cut. Okay, Bob. So since the madness has hit, how many brands? And you don't have to name any names, obviously, and you don't have to give away the gold dust. But how many brands have come to you in the last month, 3 weeks, and have said, Bob, do your thing. We need your help. We are either in triage mode and we need you to save us, or we're looking to the future, or just like what are they asking you to do?
So we've had in the last, let's say roughly 6 weeks, we've had in the order of 7 organizations, let's say. So some of those are single brands, some of those are holding organizations that have a number of brands under them. But I would say pretty well seven interactions, let's say, that's resulted in quite an interesting workload.
Yeah, and they look to you to create a store experience, correct? Like, that's, for lack of a better word. I mean, it's such a cheesy word, or cheesy sort of phrase, but I guess these brands are looking to you to sort of take a physical environment, understand how, what gets seen from the outside. I'm guessing here, right? So what products get seen from the outside, what gets seen from the outside as you're driving by on the highway or getting on the subway. What do you see when you first walk in? Sort of what do you feel, what do you touch, what music do you hear, or is it just something completely different?
Well, I think what's really important, never to lose sight of, is that everything what I represent focus on is the consumer and that consumer engagement, and how brands can engage with consumers. So physical space is one thing, and it now sounds a bit clunky to talk about retail, but that whole physical brand experience. But also, we're able to do quite a bit of work for people online. So again, it's where consumers want to engage with a brand. And what I'm finding is that brands and holding groups are approaching me, one, to do what they're doing better, but also look to maybe evolve and modify what it is they're doing. Now, some of that could be through physical space and how the interaction happens in those physical spaces. But it's also very much now about how the online and the offline, let's say, interact to each other for that sort of seamless consumer experience and engagement. But also something that we're doing quite a bit of is how can brands and businesses move forward in a more efficient way, whether that's how they have things designed and implemented on the street, or through e-com, or also just from a procurement perspective. How can we do more things more efficiently and cost effectively? I think that's something that really is resonating with brands that are out there.
Where do most brands, and I guess this is apparel brands, but this could be a two-part question. And the question is, where do most brands waste money? Right. So, for an apparel brand, where are you seeing apparel brands wasting money? And I know you work with other brands that are apparel, but where are you seeing the biggest amount of waste?
I think when we talk about waste, I think sometimes waste can happen within an organization or within a brand, and maybe through ignorance, or just through the daily necessity of all the craziness going on for everybody within a company. They don't get a chance to really take a step back and look at how they're doing things, what they're spending on certain things. So, for us, we can do a number of things. One is looking at things from a design perspective. How can that be done more efficiently? Where could that be done in the world in a more efficient way? We can do a lot of things, create a lot of things, and share that through virtual means. So the thing we're seeing more and more now is you don't have to be sitting next to each other to work on something. You can be working in various points in the world. I think there's also a procurement perspective. I see so many things that are purchased from various parts of the world that I think if there was the proper time and due diligence put into the procurement process, considerable amounts of money could be saved through what brands are doing on the high street or through their business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's going to play it's going to come to the fore even more, because if you can able to do more for less, create a great brand experience, but for less, and make your budgets either go further or save your budgets, why wouldn't brands want to do that? Why shouldn't brands do that? We all have responsibilities to the bank or to shareholders to do the best possible thing with the budgets and dollars that are available. And I think when times are good, I don't think people necessarily look to sharpen the pencil as much as they would do otherwise. Whereas what I'm seeing is that what I represent and the sort of things we're doing, we're delivering great design, and at the same time helping brands and companies deliver on the bottom line through procurement, through doing things in a more efficient, quicker, and more agile type of way.
Mm-hmm. Do you see brands? I guess so. In New York City, when I first started doing retail leasing, there was probably 18 Gaps in New York City, and they primarily basically Gap has their certain build out. I think in about 4 or 5 years, I don't know how many Gaps there's going to be in New York. My point being is that when I first started, you needed a store everywhere. Now today, in my mind, I'll tell a brand that's coming to New York, you probably need 2, maybe 3 stores in the city. Do you see? The question being is this: do you see stores as completely necessary for customer acquisition, or do you see it more as a sort of like a distribution center? I know this is sort of like retail jargon I'm spitting out here, but my point being is that with the internet and the way people shop, the way that customers are shopping on the phone. I did it this morning. Are you telling brands they need more stores? Or are you telling brands, look, you really just need 1 or 2 stores, and you got to make them the best possible?
Yeah, I think it's there's no question that click and collect. There's people, older people near us here, where I would have been amazed that they were really that competent at using the internet, who are now with the local supermarket because of the environment. They're ordering online, and then younger members of the community are collecting their groceries for them. So I think there's definitely the pandemic has introduced a speed of evolution that may not have otherwise happened, or certainly would have been longer.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I mean, I think my wife is in the fashion industry, and we were talking a couple of days ago about some of the things that were what's what I'm looking for, that were going to happen anyways, but COVID just sped it all. Things that were inevitable are now completely reality. And I'm curious, what are you either thinking or saying or seeing that maybe 9 months, or maybe 9 months ago, 6 months ago, people were sort of talking about, and now it's just like, this is the reality. This is what we have to deal with.
Yeah, I think it's something that we've been, I've been particularly interested in for quite some time, is that evolution of the physical space. When I go back to the mid to late 90s, brands in China were rolling out 15 stores a day, 15 stores and shopping shops a day, and they did that every day for years on end because of the size of markets, like China. But then, internet and communication then compared to now is quite different. But I always think that when you look at a physical space, for me, retail, selling something, you can go from a very basic supermarket, freezer store, that's retail. It's a very functional type of environment, through to environments now which have become more and more about a brand experience. And ultimately, for people that work within brands, and they're working with founders of some of these brands, we've got to realize the fact that somebody walking into a physical space on a high street in New York or Tokyo or Beijing, that's perhaps their only way to physically immerse themselves within that brand, within a three-dimensional space or environment. So I think, that's always had a significant part to play with built spaces, environments, brand experiences. With e-com and what's happening with the pandemic, for me, I think it's really interesting. One, in terms of accelerating people's use of e-com and becoming more and more comfortable with that. But what I also think it's done, though, is that there's going to be a large part of society that miss human interaction. That sort of social aspect. Shopping is a social thing as much as anything else. So I think that it also illustrates that human beings don't like being cooped up in their apartment or a house and told they can't go out and relate and connect with other people. So I think there's the social aspect to retailing and experiencing brand and that immersion that's gonna be really enhanced through the e-com part. I think it's a real hybrid that's going to come out of this, but I don't see it diminishing the need for a high street. I think it just evolves what the high street's gonna look like and how people create those spaces.
So we were just talking about Hermes having that almost $2 million day a couple of weeks ago, and just how some of the streets in China, or the shops in China, people are going crazy to spend revenge shopping. Is revenge shopping like revenge sex? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder. Anyway, hope so. So is sort of that what you're looking at, like, when you are talking about this, or is this sort of just? Is that where it's coming from? Because it's pretty crazy what we're hearing about in terms of some of these high streets in China.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think we need to be mindful. It's never a good thing just to think short term. We need to be agile, and the work we do with people needs to be able to reflect real world situations. Because if you're not moving with something or circumstances, you can get left behind. But you need to make sure that you've got that sort of mid long term plans out there. So I think everybody is having a different experience during this pandemic and lockdown, and there's some pretty horrendous things going on out there. So when people talk about revenge shopping, or the fact that people can't go out and socialize or spend money in bars and restaurants, and therefore they're actually saving money, that's part of the picture. But there's obviously a lot of other people that are struggling quite considerably with loss of employment. So I think, we've seen and heard this term revenge shopping, and you see some of the streets in China, which certainly show a large return to the high street. But I think we all need to be careful just in terms of how this virus operates and the resurgence of the virus because of social connectivity again. Right. So I think it needs to be balanced. But I think we need to make sure that what we do going forward provides brands and businesses the platforms and tools and the capability to reflect the new, and also understand the fact that we as human beings, we change our behavior as a result of something, but we have this uncanny knack to revert to type. So there's no question in short term, there's going to be some interesting things happening, but I think we'll end up back into where we were pre-pandemic in some shape or form. But a lot of use of technology would have accelerated, and if people haven't embraced that already, they certainly should.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's sort of my next question was: is it stupid for me to think that online sales haven't just skyrocketed for the last 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, really?
Again, I think it's on some of the the metrics. Some of the guys in China were talking about some of the online sales data from some of the large platforms there, and it's a little bit surprising to see some of those numbers. I don't know the numbers well enough to quote them, but again, when you look at what people are buying online and everything, there's no question that convenience of buying online really comes to the fore. But as an example, where I am currently in New Zealand, I can't have anything delivered to me. I can't. There's no postal service. There's no couriers. So we're relying very much on communicating with the local supermarket through online, and then going there and collecting on the behalf of of others. But again, I think it's interesting when you look at health clubs and fitness. There was quite a quick flip there into doing online classes, which I think has been fantastic. I think it's made people aware that you don't have to go to an office to work. You can do it remotely. You can interact with far more people with technology than you can doing a 9 to 5 sitting at your desk. But there are also people that need to go into an office. So I think it will accelerate aspects and areas of community and commerce, but I think there's a lot of basic principles that we as human beings need to remain true to and want to have in our lives.
Well, gyms are a really interesting comment, because in New York City, what gym you belong to or where you go is a big aspect of your social life in the city.
Yeah.
And they have all the different gyms and Equinox and New York Sports and whatever. So I really feel you when you talk about gyms, because it's, again, like in New York, it's like it's almost more important. It's like, what car do you drive in LA? What gym do you go to? And by the way, I'd heard that like you can't, if you want to order a kettlebell, right? Like a kettlebell right now, you can't, because it's like trying to get an N91 mask or whatever and a kettlebell are just like impossible. Everyone's working out at home, but I just, well, this is actually interesting to sort of pontificate on, because I think there's people who can work out at home. Yeah. I have learned that I am not one of those people. Although I'm trying, it's not going to last much longer, right? I just go crazy and it's just not going to work. So I think that the gym is one of those things where once they reopen, it's going to go crazy. I sort of feel the same way when it comes to shopping, just like you were saying, because brand, again, this is more apparel brands than anything, but so much of it is, I think people are going to want to check in with their tribes. Yeah. I think people are going to want to, check in with, they're going to want to find new value signals to wear around, or value antennas to wear around, and it's that's going to be a big part of it. If you're not a brand who doesn't have, and if I'm speaking BS, call me out on it, but I think if you're a brand and you're not giving a customer that opportunity to reconnect with your brand, and to reassociate with your tribe, you might lose a tribe member. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm just talking crazy talk. I don't know.
No, I think that there's going to be. I think there's going to be, a lot of fallout. Good, bad, indifferent coming out of this. Yeah. I think that the way certain brands have handled the situation, handled their staff, reacted to this, that's going to linger in people's minds. I think some brands are going to come out of this, incredible, great integrity. And there's going to be other brands where, again, without naming any brands, where you just look at it and go, you're just not treating people the right way. You talk one thing, you talk about your brand values, but when push came to shove, the real brand came to the fore. So I think in that regard, I think some brands, let's say, will win coming out of this, and I think some brands, I think this is going to come back and haunt them, because they've been seen for who they really are, and I think that's been interesting and important. And I don't think it's, sometimes the rush to, and now we're making masks in our factory, or when we're making protective gear in our factories. I think that's fantastic. We need to make sure that people on the front line doing all this incredibly hard work are properly protected. And there's obviously a large kickback. I saw all this, this social commentary about true meaning of value of things, the things in our lives, what has real value now in our lives. You could turn around and say, a face mask now has a lot more value than it did maybe 5 months ago. And that's sort of all relative versus some of the very fake plastic personalities there are out in the world that we all like. Well, they drive me nuts, but people like to watch TV programs about certain families and stuff happening. It's just like that's bullshit. That's just like, anyway, that's a whole different
well,
thing.
It's you had said some brands are going to win, some more brands are going to lose. I wonder what a win looks like to some people, right? Like if you are a truly global brand, what does a win look like? Okay, like if you just if you're just going to cut costs at all levels, and if you're just going to cut costs at all levels, fire all your employees, and just stay alive, you're right. People are gonna see that, and they're gonna see that it was. Well, here's another way to look at this. Maybe I'm trying to say is this: any store that closes down or fires an employee, I think you have to kind of ask yourself, well, was I surprised that brand did it in the first place? Because like if Nike closed down a store and never reopened, I would be shocked. Okay, there's some other brands out there where if they close down, or let's just say they've closed in the last 6 months, I wasn't surprised. Like didn't go there anyways. You know what I mean? Like they were empty anyways. So I think it's part of the sort of Darwinistic approach or Darwinistic outcome this is going to have. I think those brands that are not customer centric, that were another way of looking at this is this decision for these brands to decide who they want to be and how they're going to end up and win was actually decided way before this ever came, right? So if they didn't give a damn about from their employees or customers, the customer's not going to be there for them. I was in a major mall in London last December, and how many malls are there in London? Okay, but like there was this massive 30,000 square foot apparel store. And I forget the name. It was some cheesy name. I forget the name of it. And it was empty. Well, I guarantee you those guys are gone. Right? And I guarantee you there's a lot of people who have not focused on customer service. There's a lot of brands who just aren't who aren't talking to their salespeople to get the latest feedback, to see what they're seeing. The 19-year-old salesperson on the front line is such a vast source of information and feedback for anyone when it comes to what's selling and who's buying and who's shopping there. That if you're not a brand who's talking to your salespeople, I wouldn't be surprised if you're one of the first brands to fire 2,000 people, 80% of your staff.
But do you not think that this is a very humbling time for us as human beings and populations. I mean, to be as helpless as many of us are in this regard, you don't know whether family members and friends and colleagues are going to get this. It's not discriminatory really in that type of way. It's pretty humbling, but I really get the feeling as well that it puts us back in touch with what it is to be human and what we need to be doing as human beings and what we value as human beings, and that's human interaction. It's about personal connection. It's I don't want to say it's about going back to old school stores where the proprietor knew your mum and dad and your grandparents, and they know what groceries you get on a regular basis, when your birthdays are. But in many ways, that is sort of like the future. That sort of customization, that sort of, people now talk about, big data and mining data to get all this information. But in many ways, that's what's happened in a very human way back in the day when things were at a smaller scale, because you didn't have the e-commerce that you have now. But I think it's that type of thing that is going to achieve the greatest cut through going forward, is that this brand knows me, it understands me, it's part of, it's a tribe I can be part of. It has values that I respect, and values that I like to think that I have. I think all those types of things are important. I think when you have a brand or a business that is very dictatorial, or think it's above a lot of this, I think those are the brands that will come into will have a lot of issue. I don't think they will be around for very long. That sort of faceless, sort of mass market. I just think that's maybe has a time and a place, but I don't know that that's really where the future is, or where future growth is going to come from. And obviously a conversation like this, Trevor, is very broad and from generalizing, because we could talk about a city, in a state, in a country. Geographies are different. You look at social and economic factors. Even in you take India or China or Russia, you can't just apply one filter through that. So something that's appropriate and relevant on the East Coast isn't going to be appropriate and relevant on over in the West, in China or Russia or places. So I think it's about having the professional experience, the research, listening, like you say, to some of the most important people, which are your shop floor staff, the salespeople that are selling things, interacting with the consumers. I think it's about making sure that you're as fully informed as you possibly can to make the best possible decisions, but making sure you've also got that palette of solutions so that you are able to reflect the needs of consumers in a metropolitan city versus the needs of a consumer in an emerging city, in an up and coming country. I think you've got to have that adaptability in your approach. So one size doesn't fit all, but basic fundamentals and principles of being, operating with integrity, respecting each other, relationships, and being human, I think are incredibly valuable. And I think, from a business perspective, if you're highly geared, you've got too much debt, you're spending too much money on achieving certain results, you're never going to survive. So again, for me, the importance of being agile, getting more bang for your buck, and being able to procure things in the right cost-efficient type of way without impacting quality. I think that's a fundamental that all brands or companies should be doing.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I do think that sort of shared mass experience, or the faceless sort of massive marketing, there is definitely a time and place for that, and that can certainly be a lot of fun. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think that is cool, and I do think that clearly now is probably not the right time for sort of that type of marketing, and probably won't be for a while. So some brands will get away from, we'll do it and do it well. I'm just sort of curious, when you talk about, and this is maybe off topic a little bit, but these shared mass experiences that some brands can have, do you find that they work very well in mature markets, mature cities, or do they actually work better in some of the emerging markets that you're talking about? Because it might be a newer thing in those emerging markets.
Yeah, I think it. I think there's a couple of points to to what you're raising here. I think how someone experiences your brand, or how a business interacts with their customers, can happen in all sorts of ways. Like I say, depending on the country, depending on the maturity of the market. So yeah, I think you've got to look at things and say, right, looking at one market, one country, and saying, right, we're approaching this with a tiered approach, tier 1 through to tier 5.
Oh yeah, okay, of course.
And the level of sophistication that we can deliver at a tier 1 is very different than a tier 5. But again, the expectation of a tier 5 city or market is going to be quite different. So you can have a lot more impact and wow with, let's say, simpler tools or launches or whatever.
Yeah.
But if we look at how brands are experienced, I've had great experiences there where I've seen Asian consumers. They're in flagship stores on Fifth Avenue, looking through all the products, and then basically being online, FaceTiming with their family and friends back in Asia, talking about the products they're seeing and experiencing in New York on Fifth Avenue. They may not actually have purchased something there, but it's enabled them to get into the brand and understand that brand in a far different way than maybe the third or fourth tier city that they live within in an Asian country. So again, it's a bit of a complete loop, when you look at your brand and how you communicate and look at your consumers from a global perspective, particularly if you're there as a global brand. But it could be that you've actually got a lot of interaction with your flagship store on Fifth Avenue that's by people that it's the first time they've actually been able to walk in and experience your brand in that type of way. They may not actually purchase anything there. They may go back home to their country and purchase something online, or they might even, and this is a whole different subject, they might actually even buy counterfeit products that has your brand mark on, because now they want to be part of your tribe but can't yet afford to be part of it, but they're on that journey. So again, we need always, when we're working with people, to think about the consumer journey. How's the consumer interacting with our brand? Not how do we want the consumer to interact? How does the consumer interact with our brand? And where are those touch points? And how do we reflect that in our body of work to get maximum value? Because the amount of conversations I've had in global organizations where a traditional sales organization and a sales director for North America, right? This has to be about selling stuff in North America. How can we increase the sales in North America? Is he particularly interested in an Asian consumer coming into the Fifth Avenue store, looking at all the products, the brand, getting really jazzed up by it, and then going back over to Asia and purchasing something in Korea because he's got really excited about the brand in America? He's not in a traditional way able to tick some sales as a result of that interaction or that sales staff time with that Asian consumer. But for a brand, that's incredibly important and has massive value, because if consumers are just flicked off as how much you're going to buy, how many shirts do you want to buy, if we're only seeing, and brands are only seeing, the value in dollars into the cash register in that physical space, I think they're missing a large part of the future.
I mean, look, in the last 36 months, I think I've done 21 fashion deals in New York City at various different times, term length. But sometimes they're a month, sometimes they're 5 years, Sometimes there 5 year options, whatever. Uh, so the beginning of this year, you made me thought of a different question, but I'll get back to it. Uh, at the beginning of last year, sorry, 2019. So Soho, New York, is where my office is, and it's where I do a lot of my work. It's um, in my opinion, it's probably the most important retailing market in the country because it's the only one of its kind in America. Meaning, it's the only market that has this many retailers in this small of a geographical area anywhere, as far as I know. I'm sure there's places in China that I don't know about, but in America, that's my opinion. It's clearly not the only market in New York, but it's usually the first point of entry for a lot of brands for that
Yeah.
reason. So in the beginning of 2018, there was about 43 leases that were either set to expire naturally or be engaged by the retailer to stay or go, right? Because they came in, they did a short-term lease, they want to expand. Most of them stayed. Some of them left, some of them just crapped out. And it remains to be seen who's going to be left standing
Mm.
after all this. But to your point, I really like what you said about, yeah, they come in, they buy something, no big deal, but now they're on the journey, right?
Mm. Mm.
So I guess my question to you is, do you think that brands are going to uh, commit longer term to stores? Are they going to say, look, we got it, we we really need to have a store. It doesn't need to be 10 years, but it can't be 10 months, right? If we're getting more and more people on the journey, is we just need to get them on the journey, right? Once we get
Yeah.
them in, and then maybe a couple times down the road we reinforce it, you know what I mean? Like we build that relationship. Are you seeing that? Do you think that, or do you think that will come into play, or do you think it's still going to be, look, let's just get an event, we'll get Instagrammers in it, we'll social media the F out of it, and everyone wins?
Yeah. I think without question, there's going to be. I think it's going to be, people are going to be really split in terms of. I think there's going to be a need to, from. I think trying to use a word that's not retail, I think would certainly help for the future, because retail makes it sound purely transactional. I mean, that's the root origins of retail as a word. It's very, it's to cut up, it's to sell something. And I think that, the sooner brands and corporations think of it beyond retail and a true extension of the brand and brand experience, I think that takes us into a whole future realm. Now, for sure, I'm totally committed to bottom line growth and things that are commercially driven.
Yeah.
Right? There's no question, because if you're not commercially driven, you're not going to be around very long. So I don't want to give anybody listening to this that I'm all about pie in the sky and let's do crazy stuff. What I'm about is delivering solutions that deliver true commercial results. But I think coming out of this whole pandemic, and it's obviously going to be a rolling recovery. We're not going to say, right, that's that done, let's all get ahead. I think
You're right. Yeah.
I think there's going to be a case of, right, there's a recovery and a sort of turn to normal in this one market, this one country, and now it's better over here. And then there's going to be some steps backwards, as maybe there's a resurgence with the virus. So I think what I'm seeing now from the way people are contacting me is, right, how do we get ourselves ready? How do we as much as possible future proof ourselves? How can we do things better? How can we be more cost efficient? That's the sort of thing that people are asking me. So I think there's going to be an element of sort of like step back. Geez, what do we do now? I don't think people are necessarily going to be out there rushing to open up loads more stores. But I think people will need to look at who they are, what they're about, where they're presented, how they have consumers interact with themselves. How do you make retail become something more meaningful than that? And
Yeah.
whether it's you look at the New York Roadrunners Club there in New York. It's retail, but it's also somewhere where you go and sign up for the New York
Right.
Marathon. They have running events and things out of there. You look at Dyson. Dyson,
Yep.
it's a brand I love. There's some incredible people working there, and they have these fantastic experience centers. So you can go there and you can interact with the products in some pretty cool environment. How much would they actually sell there, or how much would they actually sell online? I don't know those numbers, but I would hazard a guess that people go there, experience and get some technology and understanding, and maybe make a purchase through a shopping center or a department store or online.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I mean, yeah. Sorry.
And I was just going to say, Troy, I think I love cars, and something for me, I can remember the first time I went into a Tesla dealership. No longer have you got these days of these massive car yards, with hundreds of cars all sitting there with flags and stickers all over them. And actually, even this comment's out of date because it was a location in Santa Monica. You're there walking along a high street, and there's a normal store-sized place. You walk in there, and they're selling cars. But you can see the car, but then it's an online customizer, and there's materials for you to touch, and I think Dyson and Tesla, and there's a lot of other examples.
Oh yeah.
These are examples of how the future of brand and brand experience, I think, is going to go.
Yeah.
But companies have got to get out of some traditional mindsets of where do budgets for some of these things come from? There's an IT budget, there's a marketing budget, there's a real estate budget, there's retail marketing budget. There's a lot of this sits in different places.
Yeah, and I sort of think that when you actually look at Disney World as an example, Disney theme park. Actually a great example would be sort of like the Nickelodeon thing in. Are you familiar with the American Dream Mall?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we toured that, and the Nickelodeon park was pretty fantastic. I'm sure I'll take my daughter there sometime soon, and it just looked amazing. Like what a great way to take the Nickelodeon brand and make it the experience. And to for another plug for the mall, the American Dream Mall, who I don't work for. But they've got the indoor ski shop. But if you want to buy a ski jacket and you want to try it on, you just go to the indoor ski hill that they have. You try it on.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool what it sounds like you're getting into, and it sounds like you're really doing a lot of cool work. Okay, we are way over time. So before we're going to wrap it up, but just one quick question: what's your favorite top 3 stores out there in your opinion that are doing a really good job or were doing a great job of customer service, customer experience, connection, etc.?
I would say Ralpha, the cycling brand.
Wow, really?
I love the fact that you can go there, hang out, have a coffee. There's product. That again, that's something going back quite some time now, but I've always enjoyed that level of interaction. I've gone through a number of their locations around the world, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that. We've gone from store to store watching the Tour de France, not bought any apparel, but we've interacted with people and quite enjoyed that. I think some of the Levi experiences are really cool. The customization experiences I enjoyed. Dyson, but I got to admit, for me, I live in different parts of the world, but I would have to say that when I'm in Hong Kong, when I'm in China, the local retailer, he's been selling his wares, out of the front of where he lives for generations, and you can get anything and everything there. I love that.
Oh yeah.
All the stuff's hanging from the ceiling. It smells. It's interactive.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit all over the place, but I got to admit, I love something that's authentic. Something that resonates with me.
A client of mine once told me that Tokyo, anyone in the retail world needs to visit Tokyo. I've never been to Tokyo.
Yeah.
But I was told that for retailing, it's a magical city.
Yeah.
I mean, what's like in your mind? What are the top 3 cities to be if you're a retailer today, and where do you got to be?
Definitely Tokyo, and again, different places within Tokyo. Tokyo I love. Beijing, Shanghai. There's some incredible cities out there, but I would also say that all cities and towns have their areas of, let's say, retail commerce that I think have their own personalities and really resonate. But when you look at the markets in Asia, retail change is so quick. Another brand that I love is Gentle Monster.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, and there's something where Gentle Monster. You go to an eyewear store and there's walls of glasses and things like that. You go to a Gentle Monster store and there's a dumper truck of sand, and other craziness.
Yeah, awesome.
I love that origination. Seoul in Korea do some great stuff. I think for anyone working within a global organization or purportedly being global, if you haven't spent time living as a foreigner or spending extensive time traveling, you can never operate globally. You can't be a global executive if you've only lived in one town and worked for one brand.
That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
It's amazing the amount of people that are in that situation.
Yeah. Well, listen, I really enjoyed our talk. Thank you so much for your time. Very cool of you to just hop on a call with me like this. I really appreciate it, Bob. I really like talking to the cool ones. You know what I mean?
Cool.